Hello everybody, David Kennedy here, Canopy Realtor Association and MLS president, here with another ordinary realtor who has done some extraordinary things. Muriel Helms, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Good to be here.
So let's start from the beginning. You're a legend in real estate. When did you start? How did you get into the real estate business?
Well, it was one of those things you can go into and do part-time, and it's easy. Is that not what we think it is? No, actually, after getting married, finishing college, stayed home with 3 girls for 10 years. And I thought there has to be something I can do other than playing tennis and bridge. And so I thought, I had a friend who was in the real estate business, and she had children, and I would see her go to PTA meetings and things of that nature. So I thought, oh yeah, this is something I can do and do it part-time. Well, part-time might have lasted for 30 days, but no more than that. It's not a part-time business. But that was the reason for getting in initially.
So we begin in the early 70s, would we say around maybe 1972? But
Right.
it doesn't take long until you own your own brokerage. I think it's around 1978 you own your own brokerage. Now this is in a time where it might be tough it might be a glass ceiling still for women. This was a
yeah.
challenging. So
Yes.
what was it like to be a woman in 1978, to have your own business? You can control your own destiny. How'd you get there? What did it feel like?
Well, I actually had some good mentors. Sandra Townsend was, at that time, the largest real estate company in North Carolina. Female from right here in Charlotte, who was really kind of my mentor. But going into business for myself, I had a great partner, first of all. It was Whiteman and Helms, and you got the dates. I probably couldn't have called the dates. But it was, I know, late 70s when we started Whiteman and Helms. And he was in the building business. He had a company called Whiteman and Company, and then he and I had owned the brokerage business together. So that's where we started as our own company. Yeah, it was challenging to be a female, but I found out there were also advantages in being a female. So I tried to take advantage of those things anytime I could.
So you, as a woman, you would have men come in and want a realtor but insist on a man. You had the presence of mind just to go with it and refer them to one of your male colleagues and get the referral fee and keep on trucking.
There was some cases like that, because we actually did business also in Union County, and land deals in particular. The guys did not like to work with female. Well, initially I did do some referrals, and I thought, you know what, I can do this, and I just have to make them believe I can do it. So, you put on the boots and you put on the jeans and you go out into where pulpwood's being cut, and they kind of figure out you might know what you're talking about.
So when you see Berkshire Hathaway Home Services, Carolina Realty, here in and around Charlotte and the Carolinas, what does it mean to know they can trace their business all the way back to Whiteman Helms?
It's a good feeling, actually. And we went through a process that would be impossible to create today. As Whiteman and Helms, we were bought by Merrill Lynch, and that was, I guess, back in maybe the early 80s. And they were going across the 2 Carolinas, putting together a conglomerate of companies. They saw the synergy with the securities. Then when they sold to Prudential Insurance of America, Prudential said, we want to keep the relocation, but we want to sell back in a franchise system. So they sold back to local owners. We were able to keep together the 2 Carolinas. We ended up covering the Triangle, the Triad, the Charlotte region, upstate South Carolina, and the Charleston area with one company. Then once again, we got to sell, and when we sold the next time, we went back to Prudential Insurance of America and sold, and they ultimately sold to Berkshire Hathaway. It's an impossible situation to put together. Happened to be at the right place at the right time, and I loved it.
So I read an article where you were mentioned in the Chicago Tribune in 1994, and at the time in 1994, you employed 250 agents, you had over 1,000 employees, 250 agents in the Charlotte area, over 1,000 employees across the Carolinas. You were huge. How did you get that so much success?
I don't know. Things happen, David. No, I had some partners in all different regions, and each of us owned the equal share of the whole. I owned as much of Charleston as I did of Charlotte, but Charlotte was my region. Each one of my partners had a region that they ran. We also each had a specialty. Mine happened to be relocation. So I would work with the different relocation departments across the two Carolinas, and I loved it. Primarily working in, well, whether it was an individual or whether it was a corporate move, but I worked primarily in corporate moves.
When did you get bit by the bug to come serve here at the association? When did you start realizing, hey, this might be something I want to do? What kind of prompted you to serve here at the Realtor Association?
Oh, that was the mid-'80s. Actually, great friends in this business. We couldn't survive without our competition. As we were talking earlier, competition sold probably 65 to 70% of our listings. So therefore, that was our bread and butter in the company. Well, not just our company, through multiple listings. Multiple listings is a wonderful tool. But to be a part of something that you felt like you could maybe contribute some leadership in. And I love this place. I love the real estate business. Have two daughters in the real estate business now. The ones who said they'd never go into it, they're in it. But there's something about the personalities, first of all, of realtors. We're outgoing, we're friendly, we sometimes a little aggressive, but I wanted to be a part of something that would make our industry better.
You mentioned your daughters. When Kelly went through Leadership Academy and we brought that class into the old boardroom, someone pointed her out and it says, what does it mean to see your mom's portrait on the wall as a past leader? And she has some wonderful things to say, obviously, about her mother, just being her mom, but also about you as being a professional. What does it mean to you to have your girls follow in your footsteps?
Actually, I take it as a compliment. And they truly did say, when I was, in the peak of it, oh, I don't want to be in that. That's too much work. There's no real glamour or whatever. And then they saw that, there really is an opportunity to help people and to earn a really good living and to have friendships. I mean, how many friends do you have that are in the real estate business? There's great friendships that are formed through that with your competition.
So you served in the mid-'80s, and we just passed him in the hall. You served with the youngest president almost we ever had, Dan Cottingham.
Dan Cottingham and I were best of friends. We went through GRI together at Chapel Hill. We were great competitors. If there was an issue with one of my agents that might be dealing with one of the Cottingham Chalk agents, all I had to do was call Dan. We sat down, worked it out, as well as with John Chalk. Great friend, and again, friends that were formed in the business.
So we're back, and we're still doing MLS books in '85 when you served.
Oh yeah, that was fun.
Yeah. Do you remember there being like an undercurrent of the computers coming around? Do you remember, is that something that's kind of nipping at your heels as leaders, that this is something we got to be mindful of?
Yes, yeah. Well, first of all, and a little bit of the history of it is with those MLS books, they were about 3 or 4 inches thick. And if you didn't get your listing in before Tuesday, then it wasn't going to be in the book until the next week. So it's not like you could immediately find out what was going to be on the market. So you drive to the MLS over on East Morehead, pick up your book on Friday afternoon, and start thumbing through, what was available. So how great is it today to turn your computer on? And the keys, the way we had to do the keys back then.
What were some of the challenges that you experienced, maybe while you were a leader or maybe while you were kind of working through the ranks? from being an agent to maybe owning your own business. What are some of the challenges that you had to endure and overcome?
Probably one of the greatest challenges in the business is the volatility. It truly is, make it while you can sort of thing. During, I think it was maybe 81, 82, when the interest rates were like 17%, and the APR would have been probably 18, 20%. I mean, how are you going to sell a house like that compared to our interest rates today? So we had to be very creative in how we did that. There were loan assumptions then. We came up with some wrap programs. There were all kinds of things that we had to do. Probably the most challenging thing all the way through was truly the volatility of it.
So when you look back, it's somewhat real estate related, but in 1990, I think it was at 95, you were the first female chair of the Chamber of Commerce?
That's correct.
What does that mean? When women come up to you and talk to you about it, what does it mean for you to be a trailblazer in that regard?
I was invited several times to speak to an organization. It was called Executive Women of Charlotte. This is a national organization. And the thing that I always tried to point out, anytime I was speaking to a group of women, to me it's an advantage, really. We were needed in roles. I had the opportunity to serve for 21 or 22 years on the Piedmont Natural Gas Board of Directors as a result of being a female. If I had been in the pool of all of the white males, I would not have probably been chosen. But the same thing with the Chamber of Commerce. It had been 115 years. It had been led by men. And, they needed a female in that role. And I had great friends that were there carrying me in on their shoulders. The Johnny Harrises of the world, the Jim Hines, the Jim Hance, the Nelson Swabs. Those people were good friends that were kind of bringing me in on their shoulders and saying, yes, we need a female. And at that time, then, I went to the leaders of the city, of the Hugh McCalls of the city, and had an opportunity to see Hugh a week or so ago and thanked him again for the support that he gave me during that year, because I knew I couldn't do it by myself. I needed the corporate support, the John Belks and the Hugh McCalls of the world said, what do you need? And they supported me. So, first of all, you got to be willing to take that risk, to put yourself out there, because you are going to be criticized. And you got to try a little bit harder if you are a minority or of any sort, race, gender, whatever it may be. You got to try a little bit harder. But the opportunity is there, and I still think it is for women in particular to rise above.
Do you feel like you have to try harder because if you screw it up, they might not ask another one?
That's right. That's right. And prior to becoming a president of the association here, most had been led by male. So that was a challenge. The media would call you, as you know, you're to speak on the behalf of the association. And so that puts you in a little bit of a challenging role.
Historically, I read that women couldn't have a credit card in their name until 1977, and here you are, you have a business in your name, and 1 year later in 78.
In the 70s, I applied for a credit card with, I think the bank was then called Security Bank, I'm not sure, they're not around anymore, they've been bought, I'm sure. And they wrote me a nice letter and said they appreciated me applying, and if I would get my husband's signature, then I could have one. So I wrote that off.
I managed rental properties for Joan Zimmerman.
Oh, did you really?
Yes, and
Great lady.
Oh yeah, I tried to never bother her, but it was about a decade that I did it. And I read an article where she said, I would write John Zimmerman, I would sign my name John Zimmerman to get in the boardrooms and do all that, and I can only imagine.
Yeah, great lady. Now you talk about a trailblazer.
Yeah, so I enjoyed every bit of time I had with her. Tried not to do everything I could not to bother her. But when I had to
Yeah.
reach out to her, then she was always so gracious with me. What when you look back, what does it mean to be a realtor? Is it was it different then than it is now? How has it evolved? When you say, hey, this is what it means to be a realtor, what does that sound like? What does that look like for you?
First of all, it's pride. It's pride on a local level. It's pride on a national level. Pride on an international level. We lived abroad for 16 years and went to some of the real estate companies there. Some really interesting stories about the real estate business in Europe, which we don't have time for. But I think that probably the greatest thing is that it is truly a canopy. It's a canopy of structure of giving support, training, ethics, professionalism, all of the things that make up for, what a realtor should be all about. I don't know that it would be any different today than it was before. There's just a lot more of us.
What advice would you give to today's realtors as we're kind of working to deliver for our clients? It doesn't necessarily have to be market specific, but what advice would you have for us today?
Well, first of all, you have to be a counselor. You have to be, you have to be able to know your market, well informed, and you certainly should be professional at all times. But I used to tell our agents, when you think that your job is to just show houses, no, that's not at all. You got to give legal advice to a degree, not beyond where your expertise is. You certainly don't want to get into giving advice on taxation and things of that nature. But you're advising them just on the process in which they go through. And it's very stressful. And oftentimes what is happening is a spouse is moving, the other spouse doesn't want to move, is going to have to change jobs. Kids are like in junior high or high school. They certainly don't want to change schools. So how do you advise them on how to pull all of this together? And we did some moves where people came from inner city and they'd never owned cars, never driven cars. So then you got to advise on how to go about getting your driver's license, how to, buy a car. So there's a lot of areas that are outside of walking in and saying, you want this house or you want this house. That's not quite the way our business goes.
Anything I missed? Anything you wanted to talk about that I didn't cover?
I got to tell one quick story.
Yes, please.
This is Rich, my husband's favorite story, because we could all write a book about circumstance that happened in the real estate business, and I'll make it very short. We had a property listed for a well-known resident of the area, whose name I won't mention, and Dan Russian, who at that time, I think he was maybe with Sandra Townsend's company. This was back in the 70s, late 70s, early 80s, walks into my office one day and he said, I'm going to make your day. I have a full cash contract for the house that you thought was going to be very difficult to sell because it was obsolete. I said, how quick can we do it? And who is it? It's a foundation out of Hollywood who locates a place that is conducive to animals when they retire from the acting business, and it's 2 chimpanzees buying the house. So I think he's maybe sort of jerking my string, and he said, no, for real. And we don't call them monkeys, they are chimpanzees. And so the chimpanzees literally come to the closing. Now they have caretakers. They come to the closing dressed with the girl with a little bonnet, a little apron, and the guy with a little bow tie. Mm-hmm. And they are living, or they were, I'm sure not today, but living in the house. But the nice thing about this is, when no longer were they there, the house is sold, the money goes back into the foundation, and they locate other acting animals. So, sell houses wherever you can.